All right, so with that, registering for spring classes, you all know how to find a class, right? Maricopa Find a Class or MCCCD Find a Class is the place to start. So just as some general things to help you, make sure you click on Open Classes Only, make sure you're on the right semester, Spring 25, make sure you hit Chandler Gilbert. Like, those are the easy things, but I always like to say the basics. If you don't already have that, like saved or whatever, make sure and do that. It's a good thing to have kind of in your browser history. The other thing is, if I said get your computer out and you're having a hard time connecting to the internet, do you guys know where to go if you need computer support as a student on campus? Anybody know the building? Sometimes the people at the library will help. Where else? It's Bradshaw. It's just south of the Coyote Cafe. It's Bradshaw 123, right? So if you didn't know, make sure and write that down. Get it in your notes. I do want you taking notes as I give you student success stuff today, by the way. So if you make sure you're doing that as part of the kind of accountability for it. So take notes even though we're not talking about writing, to show that you are active and engaged and present mentally here. So Bradshaw 123 should be there. That's a thing. When you are trying to decide what to register for classes, I know some people, who here had an advisor help them sign up for classes the first time? All right, most of the room, like 90% of the room. All right, did you do the Find a Class, or did they do the Find a Class for you? If they did, raise your hand. If they helped at all. If they did most of it. If they did all of it. All right, they gave you the section numbers and then you went, okay. So just so you know, you don't need an advisor to register for classes, so you don't have to wait till you get an appointment. That being said, it can be wise to make sure and check with an advisor at some point in the process. That I would usually recommend, if you're fairly confident, and I'll tell you how to be more confident about the classes you need. If you're fairly confident the classes you want to take are in your degree plan, you can register for them, and if something's wrong, when you do meet with an advisor, if you can't get an appointment for 2 weeks, register for the classes, because then you're registered. You have the classes. If there's something wrong, then you can adjust it, even if you lose that one and pick up another one. But if you don't have any classes, well, in 3 weeks or a month or whenever you get to an advising appointment, if you wait till then, who knows what'll be there. Does that make sense? Yeah, so to do that, if you want to check general schedule, you can always go to more options. You can choose by subject, the type of class, right? That's always there. If you know the exact class you need, you can put that in too. Do you guys know the difference between hybrid, live online versus online? So hybrid's what we're in now, right? We are in a hybrid 7 credit hour because it's the combined, right? So I realize let me use a board that's empty. So who here remembers how long you spend? If you've got 7 credit hours of classes, how much in a hybrid class, how many hours in class do you spend for a 7 credit hour class? So there's in person for a hybrid class, how many hours? It's 3.5, right? And because we had basically, I know, Pam said the same thing about the other one. Grenade. Okay, so 7 credit hours means you do a total of 21 hours a week for a 16-week course. But that 21 hours, if we're talking time with the professor in person, a normal class would be 7 hours for in person. A hybrid class is it's half that, right? And so that's where we get the 3.5. Because technically I'm 3 credits and she's 4 credits, so you get 3.5 credits between the both of us a week. And then you go and do the 17 hours outside of class, right? That's hybrid. In-person says it's a 7 credit hour class, I spend 7 hours in person. I'm still expected to do 14 hours outside of class. It will never go back to high school style where you have 90% of your work done in class unless it's a lab, but then it's usually tied to a lecture anyways. So, you guys tracking with that? Okay, so then in comparison, an online class versus a live online class, an online class is often what's called asynchronous, which means you don't have to ever, except for maybe a flexible exam situation, You don't ever have to meet in person at a specific time. Online classes, unless they say, you can always check the notes to be safe, but they usually don't have set meeting times. It's the work gets done at some point in the week or the month or whatever it is. Yeah. So the exception is if you have tests or exams. Yes. Yeah. So check the notes or make sure. But it's not going to be a consistent, like I have to show up at this time all the time, which also means, make sure you're aware. Live online is kind of the COVID style where everybody in the class shows up at a certain time for a certain meeting. You just don't come to campus to do it. You Google Meet or Zoom or whatever, right? Is that clear enough? Some of you knew that, some of you didn't, but I like to give you the basics because I'm about making sure you are supported and that you have what you need. So that way you can make educated decisions about how you do the schedule. So you can select and search by specific class types, and by days, and by times, and by whether it's an honors class or any of those things. So you can use that. I'm going to tell you one last thing. If you are enjoying the learning community and you want to see what other options there are, whether it's this semester or next fall, you can just type in learning community and search, and it will tell you what's coming up for the spring. So if you do that, and that'll get me to one more thing. So you can scroll down. So if anybody needs critical reading, that's one of the LCs in the spring. There might be another one down there, but for now, one thing to note is the notes. Did you write that down? Just because it sounded fun. One thing to note is when there are notes. If you're looking at signing up for a class and you see notes, always open them. They don't come automatically, but they have necessary information. Sometimes they'll say there's a specific lab section you're supposed to take with this specific course. Sometimes they'll say there's a specific section of another course if it's a learning community. This is whether it's a learning community or not. If your class has notes, read them. Open the drop down. Don't get, because the last thing you want is to sign up and be like, I was super prepared, I signed up for a class, and find out late December when the instructor goes and looks at their roster that something funny happened and you're in a course that requires some other prerequisite or co-requisite or something like that. Make sense? Okay.
But then if that happens, you get kicked out of the class, then all the classes are full and you're way more limited.
And you're shuffling last minute, putting out fires. So I'm trying to save you that trouble and frustration because I've seen people live it. Okay, so that's it. The other thing I'll tell you, and I'll send this in an announcement, but the Learning Communities program. Well, first, who here's a STEM major? Okay, we've got a few STEM majors in here. Who here's a business entrepreneurship management field of interest? Okay, and then I have one more that I don't remember. But if you are of specific fields of interest, check your degree plans. I'll show you how to do that in a minute. But Learning Communities did put together what they're calling suggested sections, which isn't this. We have an integrated learning community, the teachers co-teach, all that. A suggested sections version of this is if you and classmates or people with majors like you choose those sections, you're more likely to have things in common and kind of have a shared schedule with the same people in the same sections. So if that works for you, I'll send it as a reference if it works for your class stuff. So it's just a general suggested section for people of that type of major. So these ones, for instance, if we go to the top, in the STEM, if you are looking for a Tuesday morning, Thursday morning AM option for STEM and engineering pathway, then you could choose one of those. And if you get a couple friends who are in that same thing, you create your own kind of student-based learning community, even if the teachers don't know about it. Does that make sense? I'm sure all of you were watching every time I live stream. So I did a couple interviews with students in the last few weeks from last year's LC. And yeah, so if you didn't go watch those, you could. They have some nice tips and lenses on thinking about the learning community. One of the big things, they gave two really big things that they said they got out of the learning community from last fall. One was realizing how easy it is to go to a professor and how comfortable it can be and how helpful it can be. You're literally getting free hours with a doctor or a master's, but someone who's an expert in that discipline, right? Without a copay. If it helps you think of it that way, I'm just saying. So go to office hours, use the tutoring center, whatever it is, use that. But they also said it was, even the introverted students said when I realized how helpful and effective it was, how much better of a student I was when I connected with people in the learning community. Like even if it was a group chat where we started realizing he's good at this, she's good at that, we're good at that. I carried that through to the next semester, and 4 or 5 of us tried to build a schedule together so that we could stay in the same classes even into the spring or continue to connect. So keep that in mind, because that is a major student success thing, is having a solid group of students that you can rely on, even if it's just to commiserate about how terrible Greg is, right? Does that make sense? Okay. How many of you have, no, don't answer it. But consider the question, how many of you have group chats that it's like, really, Greg, another vest? No, I'm kidding. Does this vest make me look fat? Thanks. See? All right. So I'll post those just so you have them. They may end up filling up, but that's specifically for STEM engineering. The last thing I'm going to show you, does everyone know how to find their degree plan and the recommended courses for it? Okay, where do you go? In your student center? That's an option. Let me show you one that might be easier. So you might, and what if you decided to change your major? What do you do then? Who here is listed as a gen ed student right now because you couldn't pick a degree plan? No? Okay, figured I'd check. All right, let me just show you this then. So if we go into Google, so we're going to go back again. If we go into Google and we go MCCCD, Field of Interest, or FOI, if we search for that, we can get to the degrees and certificates categories. And so we've got our 9 fields of interest that Maricopa offers. And so if we're looking, and we saw a few people with STEM, so I'm going to go into that one. So if I go into the STEM degrees, these are all the different degrees and certificates we offer. If I find the one that matches what I'm doing, so say I want to go into, we'll just do engineering because it's the biggest, as far as I know, enrollment-wise. If I scroll down, you get some cool information about the degree, some possible careers, and then you get a, oh, I closed it here, or I minimized it. We get a specific course sequence by term. In this case, well, that's not useful. Wait, where is it? It's supposed to be here. Following is suggested. Oh, maybe that's what. I can't find it. One sec. I just didn't scroll far enough. There we go. So, who here's taking 12 to 18 credit hours and is planning on continuing to do that? You're considered a full-time student if you're taking at least 12. If you're less, you can click over to part-time. But if we look at the full-time, for people who are listed as engineering majors, you have the recommended, like just before COVID, professors got together in this discipline and with a few others and said, if you're an engineering student, we want you to do courses in this sequence. If you're taking courses out of that sequence, it doesn't mean they don't work, but it definitely means those work. Does that make sense? So if you are, so they're saying, well, you should be at MAT 220 by your first semester. You're not, but that's okay. And so you also have COM 100, you've got some of these other things. So they've mapped out the first 2 semesters. If the courses you're considering fall into that group or get you to that group, make sure that they're the right ones, those are good places to be. They have this for every degree plan through that field of interest page. That's why I'm showing you. So it's good to talk with an advisor, but you might be able to make an educated start and register for classes to get you started while you're waiting, and then have the advisor check. Does that make sense? Okay. Any thoughts on this before I go to the next thing?
No, I would agree, but it's like you can register, you can always drop the classes later if you need to.
Yeah.
But it's like better, earlier the better to register.
Yeah. Okay. Do you guys have any, what questions does this bring out in your mind? Any questions? Yeah, I was going to see if there were any burning, like, all right, talk at your tables. What does this make you think about? What do you see as your next action steps? Use words from your faces. What's the next thing? Oh, yeah.